It's a pretty windy day in Sweden today and an ideal day to take the new DJI FPV quad out for a bit of a wind test. Let's see how it gets on. Hi, I'm Asher DroningON, and this has just arrived and I've been putting it through its paces, so expect lots of videos coming very, very soon. But in the meantime, I thought today, being a bit windy, it'd be ideal to take it out for a wind test to see how it gets on. You can see the wind speed today from my wind speed tester here. It's not blowing an absolute gale, but it is pretty windy. Now, the main difference I expect to find when I get this thing in the air is because of the lack of 3-axis gimbal, it only has up and down movement, and therefore, as the drone tries to compensate for the wind, we're going to see our footage tilted. But anyway, let's get it up in the air and let's see what happens. Hopefully you enjoyed that little cut sequence there, and overall I was so impressed by how this drone handled the wind. As with most of these FPV quads, they're so powerful and stable that flying in wind really doesn't pose any kind of a challenge, and so I didn't really expect to have one. However, flying in wind does have a creative challenge on a drone with just a single axis gimbal. In order to fly a specific path, the drone needs to counteract the crosswind, and it does that by tilting or rolling. This isn't of course an issue with drones like the Mavic range because they have a 3-axis gimbal. Therefore, even if the drone is rolling, the gimbal keeps the camera horizontal. But with this FPV drone, flying in wind will pose creative challenges, as you can see here. Even when the drone is just sitting still, it's rolling quite steeply into the wind, which clearly affects our horizon. The consequence of this really is that you've got to plan your creative shots carefully. You may not want a perfectly balanced horizon with an FPV drone, because that's just not the type of video that an FPV quad shoots. However, if you do, you'll just have to do some post-edit rotation of the footage. I did notice one issue whilst flying in this wind, and that's whereby when turning, you generally require to add throttle in order to make up for the natural drop in altitude. But in normal and sports mode, the user shouldn't have to do this manually, because the DJI firmware should really control the altitude hold for you. However, as you can see here, just as I turn, the drone drops significantly in altitude towards the water. So just be very careful when turning, and don't assume that this quad will always hold its altitude perfectly, although this is largely related to when you're flying in windy conditions. The image to the goggles was just fantastic, incredible in fact, and at no point was there any breakup of signal. Side by side you can see the unstabilized goggle view from the SD card in comparison to the electronically stabilized image stored to the drone's SD card. It really is very impressive. OcuSync 3 is brilliant. The flight time was very, very short in this weather. It was my first flight, I kept it in sports mode generally and didn't really push the quad. However, flight time was under 10 minutes, so you will need a lot of batteries to truly enjoy this product. Although of course flying in wind will require more power, and that's why the flight time was quite short. Overall, this was a really good first flight. It did handle the wind incredibly well, and I can't wait to get batteries charged up so that I can next venture into manual mode. So there we go, pretty good test, and overall I think it did very, very well. It helps the fact that this is an FPV quad. It's got a lot more power than your average Mavic, and therefore it does cater for wind very, very well. However, do remember that if you're trying to get cinematic footage on a windy day, it's always going to be tilted when you're flying at an angle where the drone is having to compensate. And that means you're going to have to do quite a bit of post-editing work potentially to rotate and level the footage. But regardless, it did a very, very good job. Anyway, comment below with any other tests that you'd like to see me perform with this lovely new quad. Give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're a bit windy today. And of course, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.